A man went to see his physician because he wasn't feeling well. "Doctor," he said, "I am suffering from a dark, unshakable depression. Nothing I do gives me any relief. I am overwhelmed with pain, and most days I can't even make it out of bed. Doctor, what should I do?" The doctor thought for a moment, then offered the following treatment plan. "This is what you need to do. Tonight, go to the theater where the great Carlini is performing. He's the funniest in the world. Everybody who sees him finds him hysterical. By all means, go see Carlini. He is guaranteed to make you laugh and to drive away your depression." Upon hearing the words, the man burst into tears and sobbed uncontrollably. "But doctor," he said, "I am Carlini." You see, folks, mental illness, it's no joke. It's a topic that is so important. I addressed it 5 years ago tonight, but things haven't gotten better. Since COVID, I think things have gotten much worse. The volume, the pace of bad news shouting at us feels for most difficult to breathe. Think back to the moment when you internally realized that COVID-19 was going to lock you away from your friends and your family for an undetermined amount of time. Remember absorbing the knowledge that a visit to the grocery store might actually kill one of your parents? Or just this past winter, were you not stunned by the seemingly random violent incursion of Russia into Ukraine? These world events each gripped us with fright and concern. But I've seen, long before the pandemic, evidence of anxiety and depression in our community members that have become obvious with no clear trigger. When people are spiraling with fear about the lives they have chosen, I see them make choices that carry steep consequences. People afraid of looming disasters leave their spouses or abandon their commitment to be loyal to them. I see people under tremendous pressure in their jobs who suddenly set aside business ethics in favor of a quick financial score. I see people who wonder if God has any mercy on flawed human beings. Many don't speak. Instead, they swallow whole bottles of painkillers or cut themselves to death somehow, slowly to grab back some control at a time when they believe God will blow everything over regardless of what they do. I worry when I see people neglect mental health conditions. I fear the permanent damage of denial of such pain causes. These are not just disasters that my eyes see. There is growing consensus among public leaders that there is a dangerous mental health crisis occurring. Just since last Yom Kippur, respected leaders have raised their voices, each like a shofar, demanding attention. For example, this past December, the Office of the U.S. Surgeon General announced that our nation's children, the adolescents, the young adults are experiencing an acute and widespread mental health crisis. He said, quote, "Even before the pandemic, an alarming number of young people struggled with feelings of helplessness, depression, and thoughts of suicide. And rates have only increased." The COVID-19 pandemic further altered their experiences at home, at school, in the community, and the effect on their mental health has been devastating. This week, October 2nd through the 8th, just happens to be Mental Illness Awareness Week. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 1 in every 5 adults is struggling, or will struggle in some way with mental health in their life. 1 in every 25 is currently living with a serious mental illness. And 1 in 5 children have or will have a serious mental illness between the ages of 13 and 18. Yet, generally speaking, as a Jewish community, we say nothing. When it comes to physical health issues, we try to be the type of community that is present for one another. We have mitzvah makers, committee that calls, that sends a card in the mail, perhaps sends flowers or even food after a hospital visit. Many of you call the synagogue to make sure that I know a loved one just had surgery. We visit our sick friends at home, in assisted living facilities, in the hospital. We take our friends and our loved ones to rehab appointments or to chemo sessions. But when it comes to mental health, we often don't know how to respond, we don't know what to say, and we don't know what to do. More often than not, we don't even know that someone in our inner circle is struggling. And so there is a deafening silence as we become paralyzed by the unintentional stigmatization of mental illness, as we fail in our sacred responsibility towards our family, towards our friends, towards our community members. Tonight, in the last 10 days, we've been speaking a lot about committing sins and transgressions. In Hebrew, the word that is often used for this is chet, which is an archery term that is more accurately translated as missing the mark on a target. When it comes to the way that we as individuals and as a community generally handle issues of mental illness and health, I am afraid that we have indeed missed the mark. And we need to do a much better job doing teshuvah, turning towards one another with love, with care, and with compassion as we seek to support and destigmatize something that affects many in our community. Do you remember Will Wheaton, an actor whose career ranged from success as a child in the movie Stand By Me to his roles on Star Trek: The Next Generation to Big Bang Theory. Well, he delivered a powerful speech at a conference for the National Alliance on Mental Illness that recounted his lifelong struggle with depression. I want us to hear it. He said, "When I was a little kid, probably 7 or 8, I started having panic attacks. Back then, we didn't know that's what they were, and because they usually happened when I was asleep, the adults in my life just thought I had nightmares. Night after night, I'd wake up in absolute terror, and night after night, I'd drag my blankets off my bed, and I would go to sleep on the floor in my sister's bedroom because I was so afraid to be alone. When I was around 12 or 13, my anxiety began to express itself in all sorts of delightful ways. I worried about everything. I was tired all the time. I was irritable most of the time. I had no confidence and terrible self-esteem. I felt like I couldn't trust anyone who wanted to be close to me because I was convinced that I was stupid and worthless, and the only reason anyone would want to be my friend was to take advantage of my fame." Now, this is important context because when I was 13, I was in an internationally beloved film called Stand By Me, and I was famous, like really famous, like can't go to the mall with my friends without getting mobbed famous. And that meant that all my actions were scrutinized by my parents, my peers, my fans, the press. All the weird, anxious feelings I had all the time, I'd been raised to believe they were shameful, that they reflected poorly on my parents and my family, that they should be crammed down deep inside of me, shared with nobody, kept secret. And that's how eventually my anxiety turned into a depression. I knew something was wrong with me, but I didn't know what. And because I didn't know what, I didn't know how to ask for help. I wish I had known that I had a mental illness that could be treated. I wish I had known that the way I felt wasn't normal and it wasn't necessary. I wish I had known that I didn't deserve to feel bad all the time. And I didn't know those things because mental illness was something my family didn't talk about. And when they did, they talked about it like it was something that happened to someone else and that it was something they should be ashamed of because it was a result of something they did. One of the primary reasons I speak about my mental illness is so that I can make the difference in someone's life that I wish had been made in mine when I was young. Because not only did I have no idea what depression even was until I was in my 20s, I was pretty sure that I had it. And I suffered with it for another 15 years because I was ashamed, because I was embarrassed, because I was afraid. Now, Will's story, I believe, is familiar to those of us who ourselves experience anxiety or depression, or have witnessed loved ones who go through these experiences or these illnesses. And while celebrities like Will have been forthcoming about their struggles, Sometimes mental illness comes to the forefront of our attention only after tragedy strikes. For example, recall when world famous fashion designer Kate Spade and internationally acclaimed chef Anthony Bourdain made headlines when they each died of suicide, losing their lifelong struggles with mental illness. Writer Jordana Horn wrote a powerful blog responding to their tragic deaths, reminding her readers that, quote, "You can be the wealthiest, the most beautiful person on earth. You can have a spouse who loves you more than anything, and children who love you and fill you with pride. Basically, you can look like you have it all. But if you're depressed or anxious or coping with any number of mental illnesses, you feel as if you have nothing. When you are struggling with depression, for example, you might feel as though someone is holding your head underwater. You cannot see the light. Whether that light is the idea that depression will one day abate, or that gratitude for all the blessings in your life, or the idea that people love you fiercely and would be utterly destroyed if you were gone. You cannot see beyond the furious darkness of the depression because it engulfs you. It prevents you from sleeping. It keeps you from rational thought. And it leads you seductively to the idea that all those people who love and care for you would be better off if you weren't around. People with depression or any other mental illness are not deserving of this stigma. They are deserving even more of our understanding and compassion. Mental illnesses are fierce enemies of life, just like cancer, just like sepsis. They are discriminate, and they prey on the young and the old, the rich and the poor, the confident and the insecure. That pretty woman that you see in the carpool line, whose Instagram feed is all beautiful pictures of her children, she could be fighting a battle you know nothing about, and she might not be so sure she's going to win it. And we all know that she is right. I know there are people in this room who are struggling even as I speak. I know because I've had counseling sessions with some of you, concerned for the mental health of a family member or a friend. I know because over the years I've made countless referrals to mental health professionals and urged many of you to seek that professional help. I know because I have visited some of you in the hospital, in your home, when you were struggling with your mental health. And I know because I've officiated the funerals for individuals who lost their lifelong mental health struggle and died by suicide. Thankfully, times have changed when it comes to the Jewish response to suicide. No longer is suicide understood by the majority of the Jewish world to be a conscious and selfish act. It is understood instead, as it ought to be understood, as a death due to an illness. This is a small yet positive step forward in the destigmatization of individuals who struggle with their mental health. But there is so much more we can and we should be doing to raise awareness, to offer our support, and to destigmatize the silent suffering that lurks just beneath the surface of so many. Our response tonight must begin with a willingness to truly see, to truly listen to, and to support one another in public as well as in private. So what can we as individuals and community members do to be more supportive to those who are struggling with their mental health? How can we work to be more open and honest about this issue and strive to remove that harmful stigma that surrounds those who are suffering emotionally? First, we have to address the elephant in the room. If you are struggling with mental health, I want you to know that as your rabbi, I am here. We, as your community, support, value, and care for you. And we can connect you with help. If you are suffering, please hear me when I say there is no shame in this struggle. I have put contact information and resources in your program for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. If you are uncomfortable reaching out to those resources, then let me be your first point of contact, and I will help refer you. I mean it when I say, I am here for you. And please remember that just as Judaism places a supreme value on our physical well-being, it also places the exact same value on your neshama, your soul, your emotional well-being. Second, we must pledge here and now tonight to watch what we say. Saying things like, that person must be crazy. That person has a mental health problem. Can't he just get over it already? She's just anxious, high-strung, sensitive, sad. It's not helpful. In fact, they may very well be harmful. You would never make a snide or sarcastic comment about someone suffering from cancer. Why should this type of illness be any different? 3, we must learn how to listen to one another and to make it clear to each other and our fellow community members that they are indeed not alone. As Dr. Rochelle Naomi Remen teaches so eloquently, perhaps the most important thing that we ever give each other is our attention, and especially if it's given from the heart. Most times, caring about it is even more important than understanding it. Most times, caring about it is more important than understanding it. Fourth, as a synagogue, I want to challenge us to consider ways in which we can publicly and actively bring this issue out into the open. How can we proactively connect those who are suffering to mental health services, to psychologists, to psychiatrists? What classes What panel discussions might we host? What support groups should we house in the walls of Kol Ami? I am open to all suggestions. Email me, call me if you have ideas. To get the conversation started, I've arranged for discussion tomorrow after our morning service entitled Taking Stock and Supporting Our Mental Health During Time of Crisis with Amy Holland, a licensed marriage and family therapist. Everyone is welcome to stay. We will listen, we will support each other, and we will explore what to look for and where to find help. Finally, I would like all of you to know that Kol Ami can and should be a place of prayer, of refuge, and of comfort to you when it comes to using our spiritual tradition to nurture our suffering soul. Prayer, faith, and Jewish wisdom should never take the place of professional help and medication, but it can be an additional tool in your healing toolbox. After our session with Amy tomorrow, Cantor Noah will lead us in a health and meditation session, because we are here for you to offer support and guidance in the limited way that we can as a community of faith. Hineni, here I am. Is it a phrase? It is a phrase that is uttered a lot during these days of awe. It is a phrase with which I would like to conclude this evening. Hineni, here I am, ready to lend a listening ear, ready to not rush to judgment, ready to offer support, comfort, compassion, and care. Hineni, here I am, ready to give voice to that which has been stigmatized, ready to see the whole person and acknowledge that every part of what makes us human, from the physical to the emotional, from the whole to the shattered, is sacred. Hineni, here I am, ready to ask for help, ready to muster all of the courage and strength that I can remind myself that I am not alone, ready to remember that there is no shame in our suffering. Hineni, here we are, ready to remember what it means to be a sacred community in which everyone feels loved, supported, welcomed, and nurtured. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will as we say, Amen.